This is critical thinking on digestive physiology, and here are the questions. This is the first one, the second one, the third, and the fourth. So let's look at the first question, which asks you, what are the consequences of decreased salivary secretion? So the first choice is increased bacterial activity. This does happen whenever there is decreased salivary secretion, because if you remember, saliva has lysozymes which are bacteriostatic, which means they inhibit bacterial activity. So if there is decreased secretion, naturally the bacterial activity can continue without any hindrance. So this is true. The second one is difficulty swallowing. This also will be true because saliva contains mucus, especially from the sublingual and the submandibular glands, and mucus lubricates and helps you to swallow. So if the salivary secretion is less, which happens when your mouth is dry, you do find it difficult to swallow. The third choice, which says no carbohydrate digestion is possible. Now this is false, because while carbohydrate digestion begins in the mouth due to salivary amylase, if saliva is less, if the amount of salivary secretion is less, it does not mean that there will be no carbohydrate digestion at all, because pancreatic amylase is also there, which helps in carbohydrate digestion. So pancreatic amylase, which is present in the duodenum, that will continue with carbohydrate digestion. So this part is wrong. So hence, since these two are correct, the correct answer would be 1 and 2, which is the fourth choice. Now let's go to the next question, where you're asked to identify the true statement. So let's look at all these choices. The first one is that glycogenesis will cause blood glucose levels to increase. Now this is false, because glycogenesis means that glycogen is being synthesized. Glycogen is synthesized when there is a lot of carbohydrate present, and when there is excess carbohydrate, some of it of course is in the form of glucose, but the excess is converted to glycogen. So when it is converted to glycogen, the blood glucose levels will not rise, because you're taking glucose and you're actually converting this glucose into glycogen. So this way, in the opposite direction. Glycogenolysis, when glycogen is broken down, that will cause blood glucose levels to increase. So this statement is not true. In fact, glycogenesis, whenever you have the word genesis, this means this is an anabolic reaction. So in this case, you can see that glycogen is being produced. It's produced from glucose, and hence blood glucose levels will not increase. The second one is a person with liver disease will have pernicious anemia. This is also false, because pernicious anemia occurs when there is lack of intrinsic factor, an intrinsic factor is required for the absorption of vitamin B12. So either there is a lack of intrinsic factor, or for some reason vitamin B12 is not being absorbed by the body. A person with liver disease will have bleeding tendencies, because if you remember, the liver produces thrombopoietin, and it also produces a whole lot of clotting factors. It's responsible for producing clotting factors. So if there is liver disease, then it cannot function normally. So thrombopoietin, which is responsible for the production of platelets, and then clotting factors are not being produced. So the person will have bleeding tendencies and not pernicious anemia. Let's look at the third statement, which is the stimulus for secretion of intestinal juice is through stretching of the wall and chemical nature of the food. This is true, because the stimulus for secretion of any of the juices, be it gastric juice or intestinal juice, is through the nervous system. So there is stimulation through the nervous system and through hormones or any other substances, for example histamine for HCl, but here we take nervous system and hormones, and the nervous system is primarily stimulated through stretching of the wall, so that which is due to distension. So when food enters an organ, for example, when chyme enters the duodenum and then the rest of the small intestine, the wall is stretched. So if this was the initial caliber of the wall, when chyme enters it, it stretches the wall. And that the mechanoreceptors in the wall then stimulate the nervous system, which brings about secretion of the juice. In this case, it's intestinal juice. Chemical nature of the food, for example, the decreased pH because of acidic chyme or other substances which are present, they cause secretion from the hormones. They cause hormonal secretion. Those hormones then go and act on the cells and cause intestinal juice to be secreted. So this statement is therefore true. And this is true, as I said, for secretion of juices even from the stomach. The distension, which acts on the nervous system, and the chemical nature, which acts on the hormones, and both of them bring about secretion of the juices. The fourth statement, which is receptors in the digestive tract which bring about digestive activity, are seen in the submucosal glands. Now this is false, and the receptors are seen in the walls. And these were the receptors I was talking about in the previous statement. The mechanoreceptors, which are the stretch receptors, which act primarily on the nervous system. Then you have the chemoreceptors and the osmoreceptors, which act on the nervous system too, but primarily act on the hormone cells. So these are not seen in the glands, but they are seen in the walls of the digestive tract. So this is false. And the last statement, which says a newborn child's GI tract will not manufacture vitamin E and vitamin B complex. Now this is also false, because while a newborn child's GI tract will not manufacture vitamin B complex, and that is because it does not have those symbiotic bacteria in the large intestine, it will not manufacture vitamin K. So vitamin K and vitamin B complex are manufactured by those bacteria, and since a newborn child's GI tract is sterile, that's what they will not manufacture. It's not vitamin E. So hence this statement is false, because while part of it is true, those bacteria do not produce vitamin E. They produce vitamin K, and as I said, a newborn child's GI tract is sterile, and hence they won't produce B and vitamin B complex and K, and it's not vitamin E. So this statement is false, and the only true statement is the third one.